Well, thank you for making time for this today, Christina. It's always exciting to get a chance to hear from some of the folks that we've had a chance to work with before, but not had a chance to hear the backstory behind. So, um,
Yeah.
as with most of these episodes, I'd love to just hear a little bit about, how you've gotten to where you are today. Um, from what we've done in the past, I see a ton of people really appreciating this part of the episodes just to kind of hear, the highlights of your journey so far. People seem to take a tremendous amount of value from just hearing about the way you did things, even though there's, a bit of a different approach for everyone. So, I'd love to hear a bit about your story so far, Christina. How did you get to the role you're in today?
Of course. So I feel like I can relate to a lot of students today, not really being quite certain what I wanted to do with my life upon secondary school. However, it took a while. I mean, a lot of failure and definitely trying out some different positions. I've worked a lot of different part-time roles just to try to get some exposure to different careers. However, I would say it would be my placement with my postgraduate certificate here at Fanshawe with the Corporate Communications and Public Relations program. I actually worked with our Community Employment Services, Fanshawe, and I helped plan the career fair events, not within the college community, but with the in within the London community. So
Oh,
anybody who was unemployed or underemployed, yeah. So I got a little taste of career development that way, and I had some great mentors on the team that were really, coaching me and helping me kind of understand and realize, because you really do, you are good with people, you enjoy helping people and understanding you can relate to them, how, it can take, many applications, many interviews. You may fail at some of these interviews, learning to kind of be resilient and keep going. And I would say that played a huge part in my career journey here at Fanshawe. I've held some different positions here as well, but right now I'm a career services consultant. With the career services team as well. So I actually do have my career development practitioner certification as well.
oh wow. That's always interesting to hear when there's, a couple of mentors or people that you can kind of point to as key people that helped you get comfortable with an opportunity or kind of take advantage of it. And were those people you met while you were in school, or you met them once you were part of the career services team?
I met them as a student actually. So while I was doing my placement as well. So I showed up and I was really welcomed and treated like a colleague essentially as part of the team. So I think that really helped as well. And I showed up each day with a positive attitude, always tried to take initiative, and yeah, really paid off.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. And thanks for kind of sharing the journey of how you've kind of gone into this position today, because it sheds some light on, the path you can take to kind of get into some of these roles and opportunities. And placement's one that we haven't had a chance to talk about a ton in the podcast yet, because we don't always have people who have done a placement themselves.
Right.
So when you started applying for your program, was placement an option, or is it a mandatory thing you had to do?
For my particular grad cert, it was mandatory. So we were to find a placement. So I went for interviews and applied and found this opportunity within the Fanshawe community. It was more for community employment services versus the career services office. However, when I did start after I completed my placement, I was hired on part-time, which is brings me here today as well. So
That's kind of the ideal scenario, I would imagine, for students is that you end up doing a placement or an internship, in a company that you're excited about, and then kind of prove yourself, like you were saying, and get the opportunity to do full-time work after that. Um, Now this is something that I'm trying to learn a bit more about. Is there a distinct difference between a placement, an internship, a co-op opportunity? Do you know that by any chance?
yes. So here at Fanshawe, I'm sure it looks very similar at many post-secondary institutions. A placement is mandatory component of your program. Often there'll be a placement coordinator, your program coordinator. If you're not successful finding one, they'll place you somewhere as well. We have a lot of students in various programs here at Fanshawe that are required to complete a placement. It's part of their term as well. A co-op is not always, some programs it's mandatory, but you have the option to opt out if you're not successful at securing a co-op. A co-op is also paid work integrated learning as well. So instead of a semester of school, it's a paid employment, like term of employment, whereas placement can just be for a few weeks. And it's my case, it was unpaid. Many of the placement opportunities are unpaid. And an internship is usually for students approaching graduation or who have graduated. They can be paid or unpaid as well. It's just something that an additional opportunity that they pursue on their own.
Okay, that's super helpful to know because I didn't realize there's a distinction between the duration as well. So a
Yes.
placement can kind of be, you know, much shorter in that case, to kind of give you a taste of different things. So, um, for students that might be interested in going into a program that has placement opportunities, do you get to do multiple placements, or do you kind of pick one and stick, with that throughout the program, or how does that work?
I think it really depends on the program. I know we have different programs here at Fanshawe where they will be required to do maybe 1 to 3 different placements and they can be in different areas. For example, I'm thinking of our child and youth care program where sometimes they want to work with more youth and teens, and then they want to work with children as well. So they have different opportunities, maybe with a school board or maybe with an agency. So lets them kind of diversify their skills and gives them a real world experience in the different areas that they could potentially be working after graduation. So I think part of my role as well, when we do that career exploration, sometimes when we talk about potential programs, the co-op opportunity or placement, it can play a huge part in deciding which program they may want to pursue, right? Because it is really helpful and helps them gain some of that experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am glad that they're becoming more and more available because I wish I had done a program that had a placement opportunity or a co-op opportunity. It wasn't really something I knew about when I applied for university, or college for students. It's something that's so valuable sounding. So I'm glad that it's becoming more and more, people are becoming more and more aware of it. And
Yeah.
one thing I'd love to learn a bit more about from you, because you've kind of talked about this even before we started the recording, was, about figuring out what it is you want to do. So when you have that kind of career exploration conversation with students, um, what kind of questions do you find help them figure that out? Are there specific questions or assessments that you do with them to help them determine a program of interest?
We do. So we have an option with their career consultant for some career exploration. So I really try to have that deeper understanding of the student or individual. It doesn't necessarily need to be a student, either maybe a potential student or alumni, and really understand their personality and start to kind of go off in layers a little bit about their values, interests, and maybe their unique skill set too. So asking them maybe things they enjoyed doing throughout their childhood, or if they were part of any clubs or associations, some part-time jobs they've employed, things like that. And then we also do some exploration assessments with them as well, depending on their need and kind of where they're at as well. So we have access to a lot of different tools in our toolkits that really we look for those themes too, right? To see what kind of field and what kind of career would be a fit for them.
Okay. This might be a tricky question, but it's coming to mind because I think it's such a valuable thing to do. But I can imagine myself doing this, and I'm sure some students do this where maybe they're interested in something, that's extremely competitive and are a little nervous about going into a field like that. It might be something in the arts or something entrepreneurial. If students come to you with an interest in, a highly competitive field, um, do you have suggestions on how they can help themselves stand out or approaches they can use to kind of develop skills to stand out in a competitive field? And I know that's a
Yeah.
tough one, but I can just see that happening to students to kind of rule themselves out because it's competitive. And yeah, curious your thoughts.
And I think nowadays too, it's more common, especially as we look at individuals making more career changes than ever before. So really encouraging them, kind of doing that skill inventory. If it's there's a requirement for some upskilling, so helping them with pathways that way as well. I also, because it can be a lot of work and seeing kind of what the end result is, I always like to try and set up or encourage an informational interview with somebody in the field as well, so they can get a real taste of what academic side is really going to look like, and then what are the potential opportunities, or how did they get started within their career as well. So I find that to be really helpful, is what often times when it's very competitive, there is that need for some upskilling as well.
That is super helpful advice as well. And it makes so much sense, yeah, to talk to someone from the field and go, hey, what kind of does it take to be in this role? Um, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned something now kind of in your journey that I'd love to hear more about too, that kind of comes next, I think, once students find, maybe a couple of different things they're interested in. And you mentioned that, you had to apply for a couple of different things um, to get your placement. So what was that process like for you? What was it like trying to, apply to different places? Did you find certain things worked and certain things didn't when you applied for these different opportunities and interviewed for these different placements? And are you noticing, things that work and don't work for students as well?
Absolutely. I think really for me too, and I kind of missed the mark as well, was learning how to really articulate my relevant skills, right, to the positions. It was very competitive, as you mentioned as well, some of these placement opportunities. So I was competing essentially against my classmates as well, right? So I think practicing, and really doing that skill inventory and understanding yourself, right? So you can speak of yourself in a professional manner, in a way that really sells yourself to the employer. And that was something that I think my answers were a little bit brief. I wasn't really going that extra mile. And it wasn't until I kind of, talked to actually, asking for help. If you're not succeeding, I'm not getting a position, I'm securing the interview, but I'm not necessarily getting the position afterwards. So actually going and reaching out for help from faculty really did help me. Well, how are you answering these questions, right? So really getting that support, I think, was what helped me, help myself stand out, right, and secure a position.
And that's kind of good to know, right? You can kind of feel alone sometimes in that endeavor to try to figure out, well, something's going wrong, but you're not quite sure what. And I think some students end up trying to figure that out alone. And, that's maybe that works for some, but you don't have to do it alone. So for students watching this episode, it's just a reminder you have these amazing career services teams that can guide you. And when you reached out for help, Christina, what were some of the questions you were struggling with, or what are some of the questions you hear students struggling with in an interview?
I think what they're struggling with is how to kind of articulate skills they've built within the classroom into like making that transition into the workplace, right? How you would, some of these scenario questions or skill-based questions, how you can actually talk about, some of the projects, some of the assignments you've done, some of the work you've put in, and how you're professionally articulating that to the employer. I think that's where they really struggle as well. And I know nerves can get the better of them as well. So we do have some great resources and support as well to practice, because I feel practice makes perfect, right? So
100%. And that's a good reminder as well that you can talk about things you've done in the classroom. Because I've heard a lot of students say, "Oh, I couldn't answer that question. I don't have any work experience," but they're at the end of a 2 or 3 or 4 year program and just didn't realize they could talk about a classroom project or something like that.
yeah, absolutely. Or even volunteer work, or if they're part of a club or a team. So making all of these connections, right, to their own life experience to this particular opportunity, right?
Yeah, that's very helpful to hear and a great reminder as well. Um, Now, were there any things like, are there things you're noticing students do in an interview setting that are kind of something we can warn people against, some do nots, if you will?
Yeah, I think that they tend to always, from what I'm noticing as well when I work with students, is they bring up the what's in it for me questions as well. So they want to talk about vacation benefits and salary. different things that are just not appropriate necessarily within that first interview. And also, when you're sharing information, you don't want to get too personal as well. Remember to keep it related. Answering the question in full, of course, is number one. So ensure you're listening and answering the question to the best of your capability, but making sure you're not sharing any of those personal details as well. That's something I've been noticing that's been happening.
Yes, I have noticed that as well. And to be fair to the students, I've heard them ask what is, okay to talk about. So I totally agree with you. There seems to be some confusion right now around how to answer even a question like, what did you do on the weekend? Uh,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So, do you have any insights on that one? Because students seemed genuinely concerned about what was appropriate to share and what wasn't. So even if it's something simple, the interview's just getting kicked off. Hey, nice to meet you. How was your weekend? Do you have any insights on how to answer a
Yeah,
question?
I'd say keep it casual. You don't have to give them too many details, but a few things depending. And of course, if you were partying or going out with a bunch of friends or, getting into trouble, that might not be something you want to share. But if
Exactly.
you were, away with friends or maybe you got away to a friend's cottage, something like that, you just keep it brief and to the point, and then of course carry on the conversation and ask about their weekend as well, right?
Right. Yeah, because that's an interesting place to build some rapport. Because I've heard some students answer that question really well because they'll talk about something like, a hobby they're working on, like learning to cook something, or they're, preparing for some kind of athletic event, or they're just working on a skill. And sometimes it seems like the interviewer might also be interested in that thing. So there's a bit of like a rapport building happening there. So um, there's definitely an interesting way to answer it. I think if you practice, like you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good opportunity to demonstrate organizational fit as well, that cultural fit, right? So if you wanted to talk about some of your different interests, things like that as well, maybe you enjoy doing Wordles, maybe there's a documentary you're watching, things like that. You're right. You could really relate to the interviewer, the employer as well that way.
Yeah, see, those are cool examples. Thanks for that one, Christina. Because something like
Yeah.
Wordle or a documentary or something like that, is showing a bit of personality without kind of
Mhm.
overdoing it. Those are cool suggestions. So, again, for those watching this one, think of those kind of professional examples that you can use to build some rapport that aren't kind of oversharing.
Yes.
Great, yeah, great reminder, Christina. Thank you for that one.
Yeah, of course.
The next kind of question I'm wondering about here is that um, as you kind of, try to find more and more of these opportunities, you kind of mentioned having met people through placement, but also that you had to go and find these opportunities and interviews on your own. Did you find um, any strategies that made it easier to, meet people, talk to people, kind of get an opportunity to interview?
Yeah, definitely. So I know a lot of students don't love to hear this as well, but networking. I attended different events. I asked individuals to meet for coffee, just the good old fashioned conversation that way to meet and learn a little bit more about their role. And a little, if it was a certain area within the college here or within an organization, ask them what they enjoy about their role and different questions and get to know a little bit about the recruitment process that way. And I think that really gave me that advantage to understand what their recruitment cycle looked like, how I could personally best prepare for that particular role and interview. I definitely recommend the informational interview.
Okay, that's I know what you mean. Students, yeah, I think they're becoming more aware they have to do that, but it's one of these things where I know they struggle to just take that first step in
Mhm.
even writing a message to ask someone for an informational interview. Um, what kind of things did you say to set up a coffee chat or something like that? Was it a couple lines, or did you research the person ahead of time, or what kind of things did you find made it likely someone would respond and take you up on the request?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I met them at an event, whether maybe it was an employment sector council event or business after five, or a colleague of mine may have known them or a friend. I'd mentioned that connection right away, just a couple of lines asking them if I could get to know a little bit more about, get to their role and how they get started within the organization, and hoping to build some connections within the college, right? So that was a strategy for sure.
Yeah, so just simple, kind of, hey,
Yeah.
I'd love to learn more about what you do. That's helpful to know. So for those who haven't written a message like that before, that it doesn't have to be overly elaborate. It can just be a genuine interest in trying to learn about someone. And I found that helps too. I reach out to people like that too. And more often than not, people are excited to share about their world.
Absolutely. With things like LinkedIn, it makes it very easy to find potential connections as well. I found that it was very popular for myself. I was getting a lot of requests over COVID for some Zoom meetings, just some informational interviews to learn a little bit about my role, somebody that was maybe considering starting off in the career development industry as well. So, and I would always respond yes and be excited about that opportunity too. Yeah.
That's a good point. I think, you might hear, oh, a coffee chat and think you can, of course, meet someone in an actual coffee shop. And people definitely do that. It's a great thing to do. But yeah, a Zoom interview is another really quick way to meet people. I've met some incredible people that way. This interview, for instance, with Christina.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's a great way to do it that doesn't take as much time or commitment. You might find it a little easier to have people say yes. So that's a great suggestion as well. Uh,
Yeah.
Now, do any stories come to mind of, students you've worked with in the past, kind of success stories of things that have worked, students who have kind of gone over and above and kind of ended up in the roles they were excited about that we can kind of learn from as well? Do any come
Yeah,
to mind?
absolutely. A few, actually. It was funny. I was just at a table for orientation, and one of the students that I met with a few weeks ago, this is a part-time role, but we were looking at on campus, and as many post-secondary institutions, there's not that many on-campus opportunities for students, unfortunately. However, I still encouraged her to apply for a few opportunities as well as look off campus as well. And she just shared that she secured one of the ones that we were looking at together. So that was great news. I always love when students share that they've been hired or some success stories as well. But I have many graduates that have had some that I've worked with for months as well. And I told them, you need to start early because it can take many, many applications before you hear anything. So even, utilizing tools that they have available now, while they're current students, but as alumni as well, some of the supports are not as available for you as well, or there might be a small fee attached to them. But as alumni here at Career Services, we do try and support them as much as possible with different tools. So yeah, they ended up getting their dream job. There was some issues with confidence as well and communication, as this is English as a second language. She had come from another country, has great, like a diverse skill set, and just trying to help instill confidence in her as well. So what I recommended, some conversation circles. She actually joined Toastmasters as well, just because she had that fear of public speaking, and that was a big part of the role as well, would be delivering some presentations, right?
Yeah.
And she actually shared with me, I think a month ago, that she secured her dream job. She was in customer and relationship marketing program here at Fanshawe, and she has a lot of CRM experience, a lot of experience with Salesforce. So a lot of it came to, she just wasn't able, she didn't have that confidence, right? And she shared with me that she secured a role right in the field. So very
That's
happy to hear that.
amazing. Oh, well,
Yeah.
congrats to you and to her, Christina. That's so cool to
Thank
hear.
you. She put in a lot of work, I will say, whether that be utilizing even things like LinkedIn Learning, right? So just to really kind of expand and diversify her skills.
Yeah, it's funny how confidence plays such a key role in it, right? Because it's almost like even prior to that, she had the skill, but you have to do these things that give you the sense of confidence to tell people you have that skill. And then,
Yes.
but yeah, it's just kind of, yourself, in a way. It's not anyone saying no. It's just sort of you giving yourself the chance. So that's a really important thing to remember. Thanks, Christina. Just, you know, to do these little things that build confidence, like the conversation circle or Toastmasters or LinkedIn Learning. You get a certificate. It does feel like, okay, cool, I'm certified in this, whatever it is you're
Absolutely.
doing.
Yeah. And it's nice the employers see that you are taking that initiative to go above and beyond and build on some of these different skill areas too. So I highly recommend that. Anything that you can do to upskill.
Yeah, and thanks for putting the kind of the time frame on it as well, that it can take months. Um, I think that's sometimes misunderstood, that, people kind of see other people in the role and think, why am I not there? But it takes time, and it can take a long time and many attempts, like you're
Yes.
saying, to kind of get there. So that's another really important thing to, I think, to keep in mind. So I'm glad you shared that one too.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. It can be really challenging too, especially if you're, being invited to interviews and, you have to have that resilience, be able to bounce back and keep moving forward. And if they're willing to provide feedback, how you can apply that for next time, right? If there's something that didn't go well in the interview or something that maybe there is a skill gap, something you're missing, right? So how you can learn and grow from that feedback. And I know there were some challenges too, but she persevered and secured employment. So it's a great story.
Yeah, absolutely. And is that something, do you recommend doing that after an interview? Is, like a, hey, thanks, if you have any feedback, or when do you ask for feedback? And
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes it's common that you don't hear anything from an employer, but I believe if you've been invited for an interview, you should be able to ask if they'd be able to provide you with some brief feedback after the interview for sure. After the interview and after you've heard, unfortunately, we chose to go with another candidate or you weren't the successful candidate for this opportunity. I think that's when I would ask if they're open to providing some feedback so that you can get a better understanding of, how you can improve for next time, or if it's a skill gap, is there something I'm missing, right? So just so that the job seeker, the student can have a better sense of how she can improve for next time.
okay, that makes a ton of sense timing wise. So you finish the interview, you send like a thank you note,
Yes.
and then if you hear that you didn't get the job, that's the point to ask for feedback. I would say, yeah, that seems worth doing every time. You can't that can't hurt in the learning process to try and get some insights from those people. So helpful again, Christina, just a really tangible thing we can do to improve.
Absolutely. And to be transparent, you're not always going to receive feedback and we just have to move on. But often more times than not, they will certainly provide you with a little bit of feedback from the interview for sure.
Okay, awesome. Well, we're almost at the end of the time I know I asked you for today.
Yeah,
I
of
knew it would
course.
go quick.
Yes.
And maybe the last thing I can ask you before I let you go here is just, if there are Fanshawe students watching this episode, what's the best way to kind of stay up to date with what Career Services is doing? Are you on some of the different platforms, or how should they get in touch, or keep up to date with what's happening?
That's a great question. Yes, you can follow along. We have a page on LinkedIn. We're also on, I guess it's called X now, not Twitter, as well as
Yes.
Facebook. We post yeah, any upcoming events. You can also visit us in D1063. We do have drop-in hours Monday to Thursday from 10 till 1 and sorry, 10 to 12 and 1 to 3. So we're always available to look at resumes and give you some guidance as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Christina. I know how busy you are with orientation over there, so I won't
No
keep you any
worries.
longer than I asked you for, but thank you so much for making some
Thank
time today and
you.
for sharing your insights.
It was so nice to meet you. Thank you again.
Oh, happy to have you, and hopefully talk to you soon. Have a good one.
Sounds great. You too. Bye.
Bye.